at this point with the anybody who comes to Scotland to contribute is just as Scottish as a native Scot routine. I'm sure we're all familiar with the New Scots programme. New Scots, of course, suggesting Old Scots. I'm sure we're all familiar with the questioning of what it means to be Scottish. What is Scottishness? I'm sure we're all familiar with the continual push to promote anti-racist shite in Scotland. I'm sure we're all familiar with the push to transform the way we treat the cultural, enriching New Scots or the ethnic minorities, whatever you will, who have to have their country of origin, if they so choose, and their heritage, etc., respected, talked about, learned, and all the rest of it, while they simultaneously get to claim they are just as Scottish as the native Scots who, all the while, don't exist anymore. They're being written out of history, it seems. Black and Scottish. This can only work in the context of Scottish being a label that anybody can apply to themselves when they so choose. For hundreds and hundreds of years, the Scots were an ethnicity, a people, rather similar to that of the Irish in stock. You know, just as the English were a people. Now all of a sudden, anybody can come here and be just as Scottish as the natives. Rather a little clever scheme they've got going. Because we're just as Scottish as each other. It doesn't matter how many of these people come over here to outbreed us or replace us, whatever you will. Because we're all Scots at the end of the day. Black and Scottish. In a seminal identity-defining film. It's a fucking identity. I mean, you're not Scottish. If you were as Scottish as I was, then I don't think you'd be making documentaries like this, incorporating some arseholes to talk up some propaganda. It's all, of course, disguised as if this is for his daughter and her generation, you know. Looks good, looks nice to begin with, but doesn't...
It's taken many years for me to accept my Scottish identity, which I truly embrace.
Oh, he embraces it now. That's good of him. Now you embrace your fictitious identity. Good on you, pal.
But there are still some who find it hard to accept that we are fully Scottish.
If it's an identity, I don't really see what it matters. These people try to water down what it means to be Scottish to the point that if what they say is correct, then it's meaningless. Who cares? You're not fully Scottish. That's it. You're not Scottish. Are your parents Scottish? DNA-wise? Or are you from somewhere else? But this is the thing that really pisses me off about all of this. I don't have an issue with people from other places living here. The thing that gets me the most riled up is the fact that there is no acknowledgement that we're native to this land. And that is done deliberately. So they're not held accountable. Not these people, but the people doing what they're doing to us. They're not held accountable. They don't have to be held accountable or held responsible for the displacement of the natives.
I've often been asked the stupid, Rangers Celtic question. Well, are you a Protestant Rasta or a Catholic Rasta? Glasgow, as a city, has been marking Black History Month, but it wasn't until 2017, I and my colleagues came into office, that the council, the city council itself, actually hosted something. The first time it's had the civic stamp on it, where the leader of the council herself has also addressed it, so it's been given a much more higher profile by that. If you have a slavery...
I thought you were Scottish, pal. This doesn't look very Scottish to me.
It's inherited from the ancestors who were owned and enslaved by the people who owned the plantation. So I knew that...
Oh, this guy never shuts the fuck up about slavery. I mean, we get it, pal.
...when had done that, so no.
Oh, I thought you were Scottish.
I always say that we are kind of like walking exhibits in a crime scene. And I always say that we are kind of like walking exhibits in a crime scene, in the sense of we're the evidence that Scotland had this colonial past and this colonial connection.
That these anti-racists peddle in Scotland. They make this fictitious claim that none of us are aware that we had an involvement historically in the slave trade and the empire and whatnot, and as a result they then suggest that we get taught it in school and we need to know all about our involvement. We're well aware of our involvement, if you haven't noticed. People like yourself love to remind us on a daily basis. Utopia that he claims awaits us all if we can decolonise Scotland. I don't believe for 1 second he believes any of that. He knows exactly what he's trying to do to this country. For what? Grievances for your ancestors? Or what is it? Because in the one breath be Scottish, but in the next breath I'm a prick because my ancestors might have enslaved his. I thought we were both Scottish. Take your pick.
The future of Scotland will be a very non-racial and anti-racist country because we are grappling with rejecting an imperialist British viewpoint of what a nation is and what it can be. We're rejecting an ethnocentric definition of what that nation is. We're setting an example of civic nationalism and inclusion, which means that we have a national identity which is going to be different. It's not going to be what it is now. We're preparing.
National identity, of course, that recognised that the native Scottish people made up the nation of Scotland. Now we have to pretend that we're a mere identity. And it's all part and parcel of globalised Scotland, am I right? It's all part of the bigger picture as well. You know, one of the major hurdles in the way of the people that are hell-bent on their agenda for the 21st century is the fact that there is still a sense of homogeneity across the European continent especially. That needs to be eroded and diluted as soon as possible.
I definitely felt growing up that I wasn't seen as the same as anyone around me because no one around me looked like me.
That's our problem. That's wrong, you see. A black guy moves to Scotland and he feels like an outcast because he's the only black guy. Well, that's what you get for living in a country that's majority white. I don't really understand why we're supposed to feel bad for this guy because he's complaining about feeling like an outcast.
My name is Shuti Gatwa. I am an actor, a Scottish actor. I'm best known I am best known for playing Eric Effiong on Sex Education on Netflix.
We've never officially met. I'm Eric, his numero uno, so to speak.
I was born in Rwanda.
Well, you're not fucking Scottish then, are you?
Jeff Palmer. I'm Professor of Brewing and Distilling. I came to Scotland in 1964. I became Scotland's first black professor. The overriding...
Look at that, a black guy that wasn't born here who became the first black professor. But yet we're still a racist country. However...
feeling which we had as people from Jamaica at that time was that we were here to better ourselves. And that was the critical aspect. There's a greater link between Scotland and the Caribbean than even I imagined. My mother's name was Larman, and my cousin's name was Gladstone Wood. And I've just done my DNA, and I've found that I'm sort of 3 to 5% Shetland.
My daughter Yasmin.
3 to 5% Shetland. 95% presumably Jamaican. What's your point? This was hundreds of years ago.
And then I think we were actually the only black family in Airdrie when we'd moved there. I can remember our first day of school, my mum sent me to school in a pair of sandals. Like, who wears sandals to primary school in Scotland? And every child in the playground came running down to the fence and they just gawked. They walked slowly beside us and they were just like, because they hadn't seen black people before.
You sure
all I really saw was white people.
Because I remember when I was in primary 7, a Polish kid moved to my class and he arrived in sandals all week, much to the amusement of my class. But you started off your little story there talking about how your mother put you to school for the first time in sandals. You finished off your story by saying everyone was looking at you because they'd not seen a black person before. What was the fucking point of mentioning the sandals?
Well, there were none black Scottish ones. Models. Well, there were none black Scottish ones. There were none black Scottish role models.
What's so funny about that? Is it so hard to conceive that because a country that has barely had any black people up until very recently had no black role models? What the fuck, man?
From a black person in the world.
The only person that I can think of is like, what's her name from the Spice Girls? Melanie C? Mel B, is that it? And I was just thinking, you know, I don't want to be scary. Like, why is she scary?
You people of a tendency, barrage of complaints in relation to the lack of role models, the lack of representation. Now, for people that claim to be just as Scottish as the natives, why would that bother them? Because according to them, they're just as Scottish as the people on screen. But when it suits them, they're not.
I'm an entrepreneur. I've recently set up a social enterprise which helps empower women and youth from Black and ethnic backgrounds. There wasn't that much support, so it was something that I saw was lacking.
So you mean to tell me that this woman, who's apparently just as Scottish as I am, set up an organisation to benefit solely ethnic minority women? Now, if that's not othering, I don't know what is. What about her fellow native Scottish white women? What about them? I thought we were all one. Or is it when it suits you?
So we were refugees. We were refugees coming to the UK. And I definitely now view myself as a Rwandan Scotsman. Yes, there's such a term and I'm giving it a name today.
Oh, so it's okay for him to acknowledge his country of origin. At the same time, we have to accept the fact he's Scottish. And
Rwandan Scotsman. I've always been a bit scared to say that I was Scottish because it was almost as if people wouldn't believe me. And so now I think nobody's got the right to tell you what you are. You just are who you are.
Scottish, what does it fucking matter? And at the end of the day, as I said, I don't mind the people that have come here in the past who have tried to integrate into society. They're not the issue. And pointing back to something I said at the beginning of the video, it's not even so much that I have an issue with any of these people per se, in general, for who they are. It's the fact that there is no acknowledgement. There should be acknowledgement that we are native to this land. It's nothing to do with an us versus them sort of narrative or anything of the sort. The recognition, the suggestion is that we're not native to this land. Without the recognition, they can't be held accountable for what they're doing. And above all else, without the recognition and taking the shit that's been peddled as gospel truth, it's merely an identity. And if it's an identity that anybody can apply to themselves, then there's nothing unique about us. Therefore, there's no desire or no requirement to preserve us.
We've always been here.
No, you've not.
We've always been a part of this country's
No, you're fucking not.
history, and we will be into the future.
Oh, is that so? Is that after you've decolonised it, you prick?